General Hospital spoilers tease that after Rocco's terrifying alcohol poisoning at the beach party, Gio falls into a deep state of emotional turmoil. It's not merely fear or immediate worry, it's a slow-burning, persistent obsession that clings to his mind like a shadow that won't go away. Even though he wasn't directly responsible for the incident, Gio feels guilty. He blames himself for not realizing the severity of the situation sooner, for not acting faster, for not informing Dante or Lulu immediately, and instead trying to manage the chaos on instinct. That fragile line between, he tried, and, he did the right thing, put Gio in a dangerous place, where instead of receiving understanding, he became the target of wrath from the one person whose approval he had always secretly longed for, Dante. Dante's anger didn't stop at disappointment. It spiraled into something more explosive, relentless accusations, harsh criticism, and treating Gio as an irresponsible youth who had nearly let his younger brother die due to carelessness. What Dante didn't realize, or had never known, was that every word, every cold glare he cast at Gio cut deep into the heart of a child who had never had the chance to call him father. Gio didn't understand why he was being treated this way, and he couldn't comprehend why his genuine efforts were being so easily dismissed. What confused him even more was the feeling of not belonging, as if, even when surrounded by family, he was still an outsider, seen more as a threat than someone trying to protect what he also loved. The tension between Dante and Gio continued to escalate. Every confrontation felt like a ticking time bomb. The louder Dante got, the quieter Gio became. Not out of submission, but because he no longer had the words to defend himself against someone he had never dared to dream of embracing. But just then, in the silence thickened by stress and hurt, someone unexpected spoke up, Danny. Danny, who was also at the party and had been asked by Jocelyn to keep his meeting with Vaughn a secret, suddenly took Joe's side. No one expected the boy often labeled as rebellious or defiant to be the first to openly defend Gio when everyone else was still busy assigning blame. Danny insisted Gio had done the right thing, that the moment he was informed, Gio didn't hesitate even for a second to help Rocco. He didn't run, didn't deny responsibility. He was the only one who stepped up while everyone else was either panicking or keeping secrets for their own reasons. Danny's support didn't just spark a new wave of tension. It fractured the already fragile structure of trust within the family. Dante, now cornered, began to sense the shift in how others looked at him. No one said it out loud, but everyone started to wonder, had he been blaming the wrong person? Was he clinging so tightly to his role as Rocco's father that he had subconsciously rejected the role he never dared accept with Gio? And more importantly, was his fury really about Gio, or about a deeper, long-buried truth, that Gio was his own blood? Meanwhile, Gio, caught in the middle of this chaos, began to realize there was no turning back. Danny had spoken out in his defense. That wasn't just a gesture of friendship. It shattered the fragile balance that had kept all secrets in the dark. If Danny continued talking, if he mentioned the conversation with Joss, if her WSB mission was exposed, everything would spiral out of control. But Gio knew, once someone dares to speak the truth, what's been hidden can no longer stay buried. Especially the truth about himself, about his origins, about his real parents, and why he's always felt like a misplaced puzzle piece. Rocco's alcohol poisoning triggered a chain reaction, and now the masks are starting to fall, one by one. Dante can no longer pretend to be a bystander when it comes to Gio. Danny is no longer silent or irresponsible. And Gio, the boy who once quietly lived on the margins, is now standing at the center of the storm, where every truth, every lie, and every buried feeling is rising to the surface, demanding acknowledgement, demanding healing, or threatening to pull everyone under. The story takes an unexpected turn when Danny, the one often dismissed as reckless, withdrawn, and explosive, suddenly becomes the catalyst in a chain of revelations that shake all of Port Charles. In a moment of rage and desperation following the build-up of recent events, especially Rocco's poisoning and his dramatic encounter with Jocelyn at the beach, Danny shatters the silence with a bombshell. He publicly tells Dante and Lulu that Jocelyn and Vaughn are actually WSB agents. There was no subtlety, no disguise. Danny revealed the truth like a blade cutting through the delicate veil of secrecy surrounding Joss and Vaughn. The shock didn't just stun everyone, it immediately put Jocelyn and Vaughn in the most dangerous position they've ever been in. They were no longer just teens with secrets, they became targets. Not only of real enemies, but of their own family members who were supposed to protect them. Dante, a police officer loyal to his ideals, and Lulu, someone who always upholds moral values, could not turn a blind eye upon discovering that the two children they had once loved were working for an organization that was increasingly being viewed as shadowy, manipulative, and even contrary to the public good. As soon as Danny spoke, Dante and Lulu's reactions went far beyond mere surprise. They shifted to suspicion, deep anger, and vigilance. Dante, who had already lost control with Gio, now redirected all his rage toward Jocelyn. To him, she was no longer just Carly's niece or Rocco's close friend, but a crucial link in an underground system he never wanted his son, or any child, tied to. For Vaughn, things were even more serious. His prolonged concealment of his true identity was, in Dante's eyes, unforgivable. Dante's anger turned into a firm resolution, to eliminate all WSB influence from the town, starting with those closest to them. Lulu, standing beside Dante, said little, but her eyes were heavy with betrayal. In her mind raced urgent questions. How long had Jocelyn been hiding this? How was the WSB recruiting teenagers? Was Vaughn's relationship with Joss genuine or part of a larger mission? And most of all, was someone in her family, especially Rocco, also being drawn into this web without her knowledge? Danny, in what seemed like an impulsive move, brought the entire picture into the light. But at the same time, he couldn't predict that exposing the truth wouldn't necessarily win Gio more protection. Instead, it triggered a systemic pursuit. Dante and Lulu quickly began planning to investigate the WSB from the inside, using whatever Jocelyn and Vaughn might unintentionally reveal. What once was family now stood on opposing sides. And most frightening of all, Jocelyn showed no remorse. When confronted by Dante, she responded plainly that while the WSB had dark sides, it also gave her the chance to fight for ideals she believed in, something she no longer found in the adults around her. Joss's blunt honesty, Vaughn's strange calmness, and the truths Danny exposed are now creating a seismic shift within the Corintho-Spencer family. No more protection. No more unconditional trust. Only unanswered questions hanging in the air. What is the WSB, really? Who is behind the recruitment of these teens? And why are young people like Jocelyn and Vaughn willing to risk everything for a cause now seen as dubious, possibly even treasonous? Port Charles now faces a spiritual civil war, not between good and evil, but between those who believe family is protected through secrecy, and those who believe it's time for all secrets to be exposed. No matter the cost, trust, love, or their future. And at the center of it all, Jocelyn and Vaughn are no longer hiding. They are the spark. And when the truth explodes, no one will escape the fallout. Not Dante. Not Lulu. Not Danny. Not Carly. And definitely, not the WSB. Jocelyn had always seen Danny as a beloved younger brother, an irreplaceable part of the family life she had rebuilt after heartbreak and loss. Since they were little, Danny had been the gentle sibling. Sometimes stubborn but always loyal, someone Joss never imagined could become a threat. But now, that familiar picture is beginning to crack. A relationship once built on absolute trust is being twisted by pressure, anger, and, above all, the haunting weight of secrets too big for Jocelyn to carry any longer. Secrets that can no longer be hidden as Danny begins to rebel and act on his own terms. In Jocelyn's eyes, Danny was just a teenager struggling to find his place in a chaotic world. What she didn't anticipate was that their closeness would make him the one person close enough to see everything, and the first to tear away the mask she had carefully worn to hide her true identity. Danny's public reveal of her and Vaughn's connection to the WSB wasn't just a reckless outburst. It was a devastating counterstrike from someone she had never considered a threat. And now, as the truth spreads, Jocelyn realizes the control she once believed she had over the mission and over the emotions of those around her, has completely collapsed. The mission Jocelyn was assigned, an infiltration deep into covert networks, is starting to unravel. Since Vaughn had been brought in as both her handler and companion, every step had been meticulously planned. But now, everything they've built, from gathering intel to maintaining their cover and protecting underground assets, is under threat. Danny's revelation didn't just accidentally expose the truth. It sparked suspicion from both the community and their closest allies. Dante begins to interrogate, Lulu grows colder than ever, and even Carly, the mother who once protected Jocelyn at all costs, now looks at her with worry, doubt, and a deep, painful disappointment. What Jocelyn once thought she controlled has become a weight suffocating her with every breath. She can no longer act freely. Every move is watched, every word dissected, and every relationship, even with Vaughn, is now on high alert. Because once the cover cracks, all internal structures of power start to shake. Jocelyn feels like she's living in a maze where every exit leads to another trap, and the one person she trusted, Danny, is now the one who opened the door to her secrets being exposed. But the most brutal part is the betrayal. The feeling of being exposed by someone you love is eating away at Jocelyn's core. She no longer knows whether to be angry at Danny, or at herself for trusting him, for believing that closeness was a kind of protection. And now, with the world beginning to see Jocelyn not as a carefree young woman, but as a WSB agent operating in the heart of Port Charles, her mission, both ideological and operational, is teetering on the edge of collapse. Everything she fought to protect is now being torn apart by a single sentence from someone she once called family. This is no longer just a story about Jocelyn and Danny. It's about trust. About the line between protection and betrayal. About how when someone holds everything in their hands for too long, the first thing they lose isn't the enemy, it's the people closest to them. And now, as everything around her falls like the final leaves of autumn, Jocelyn must face the reality that no disguise lasts forever. No relationship is completely safe. And no secret survives when the heart begins to break. The story is spiraling out of control in a way no one anticipated. Jocelyn, once considered a strategic asset of the WSB, is now a target of the very organization she served. The chain of events Danny set in motion has shattered the trust and intelligence infrastructure she operated within. Whether knowingly or not, Danny has pushed Jocelyn into a corner with no escape, by exposing her and Vaughn's identities as undercover WSB agents. The result? An explosive unraveling of alliances that has put Jocelyn in a deadly position. Where the threats come not only from outside, but from the very organization she once gave her youth and loyalty to. Meanwhile, a bigger, darker secret is beginning to surface. Gio is Dante's biological son. If revealed, this truth could not only shatter the fragile bond between Gio and the Spencer family, but destabilize the political, emotional, and military landscape of Port Charles. If Gio, marginalized and misunderstood, is confirmed to be the blood of a high-ranking officer like Dante, then every judgment and accusation against him would be instantly called into question. This revelation, however, puts Jocelyn, who had a close connection with Gio and knows every hidden detail, in the most dangerous position yet. She knows too much. And now that her cover has been ripped away, her existence is no longer an asset, but a liability. In the world of the WSB, where every piece of intel has value, mistakes are not forgiven. Leaks from within are even less tolerated. With Jocelyn's identity exposed, every mission she ever took part in, every conversation, every memory, could now be weaponized by the wrong hands. Vaughn, despite trying to shield her, can no longer deny the truth. They've both been burned. And in the WSB's closed system, when an agent is exposed, the first response is not rescue, it's neutralization. Jocelyn is at the heart of the storm, misunderstood by her family, abandoned by her organization, and now hunted by the very force that once trained her. Danny, on the other hand, begins to realize that his impulsive act hasn't just fractured family ties, it may end up killing someone he once saw as a sister. But at this point, any apology is too late. Dante's fury after discovering the truth about Gio and what Danny has done sends shockwaves through the Falconeri family's emotional foundation. Lulu is torn between protecting her son, saving Gio, and stopping the pursuit now aimed at Jocelyn. Carly, upon learning the truth, spirals into an unimaginable crisis, her daughter is now a target, and no one can help. Not Jason. Not Sunny. Not even the powerful connections she once relied on to save her family. In the shadows, the WSB has begun adjusting its strategy. Jocelyn is no longer one of them. She is a living witness. A liability that must be contained, or eliminated. A covert surveillance operation is launched. Former allies are now watchers. Vaughn, despite his efforts to defend her, knows it's only a matter of time before he too is ordered to take her out. And Jocelyn, once a girl fighting for ideals, is now something undefined. No longer an agent. No longer an ordinary citizen. No longer just someone's daughter. She's a rogue element, holding information that could ignite both sides of the war. And as chaos descends, Gio, the boy who once stayed silent, who endured cruelty from misunderstanding, who was never recognized as family, starts to realize, he may be the only one with a reason to step up and save Jocelyn. Because he knows how terrifying it is to be silenced. Because he knows that if no one speaks for her, she'll be devoured. And because, deep down, in a place no one sees, Gio has always seen Jocelyn as the first person who ever stood up for him, even if just for a fleeting moment. Now, everything has changed. No one is safe. And in Port Charles, as truth and trust unravel, the children who were raised to live in the light, are being dragged into the darkness by the very adults meant to protect them. Gio and Jocelyn, two young people who once seemed to exist in completely separate worlds. One, a quiet boy enduring emotional coldness from his own family, the other, a brilliant but conflicted girl caught in the whirlwind of espionage. Now share a profound and inescapable connection. Both are tied, by blood, past, or emotion, to Dante. This shared bond forces Dante to confront a reality he can no longer ignore, compelling him to make decisions that are sharper, deeper, and no longer guided by emotion the way they once were. Gio, the child who was kept in the dark about his true parentage, already burdened by guilt over Rocco's alcohol poisoning incident, is now even more isolated amid judgment and suspicion. Jocelyn, once the beloved niece whose undercover identity as a WSB agent was brutally exposed, is no longer just a girl trying to survive. She has become a pawn that powerful forces are prepared to eliminate if necessary. Both, without planning, without choice, have become victims of the system, of prejudice, and of secrets long buried within the Spencer and Corinthos families. Dante, once a police officer who believed justice could follow a straight path, must now accept that blood and duty are no longer separate concepts. He can no longer act like a detached officer. Gio is no longer some distant child, he is his son. Joss is no longer just a rebellious teen, she's the girl who once called him uncle, and who now stands on the brink of being eliminated by the very system he serves. As the tension escalates, Dante knows he can't handle this alone. He needs an ally. And that ally is none other than Sunny. Sunny, who unknowingly raised Gio as his own grandson, who watched Jocelyn grow up amidst chaos and danger, is now also being pulled into a battle he can no longer ignore. With the fate of both children becoming the central concern of PCPD and the WSB, Sunny and Dante, two men with a long, complicated history, must now set aside their differences to face a greater threat, a two-pronged assault from both the legal system and international intelligence. PCPD is pushing to prosecute Gio in connection to Rocco's poisoning, refusing to believe it was just an accident. Meanwhile, the WSB has opened an internal investigation into Jocelyn, suspecting her of betraying the organization and leaking classified information to civilians. Both Gio and Jocelyn now face the risk of losing their freedom, being exiled from the only home they've ever known, and worse, being abandoned by those they love most. But Dante will no longer stay silent. Sunny will no longer stand on the sidelines. Together, a police officer and a crime boss, form a never-before-seen alliance, determined to uncover the truth, protect what remains of their family, and confront the two forces they once bowed to, the law and the intelligence system. The coming battle isn't just legal. It's a battle for dignity, for humanity, and above all, for the right of Gio and Jocelyn to choose their future. Dante must now face the PCPD and the very colleagues he once stood beside to prove Gio is not a criminal. Sonny will have to leverage all his influence in the shadows to stop the WSB from using Jocelyn as a scapegoat for the mistakes they refuse to own. For the first time, these two men must walk the same path, not out of personal interest, but for the lives of two young souls being crushed under the weight of cold decisions. The truth about Gio being Dante's son may be the only light left that can save him from prosecution. And Jocelyn, though now under surveillance, threat, and constant danger, holds the key piece of evidence that could turn everything around. This isn't just a fight to save them. It's a reckoning. A demand that PCPD and WSB be held accountable for what they've done in the shadows. And a message to Port Charles: sometimes, the most dangerous thing to a system isn't an enemy, it's truth and family. A war is breaking out. And it will change everything, forever.